Good morning and welcome to the Bellingham City Council committee meetings. Today is Monday, April 12th, 2021. And this morning we have one committee meeting before us. It is the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Lillquist. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Hannah. We have a couple items for us today. The first of which is a noise variance. Washington State Department of Transportation, I-5 and State Route 11 Padden Creek Fish Passage Project. WashDOT and Granite Construction are requesting a variance from requirements of the city's noise ordinance for the Padden Creek Fish Passage Project in the Samish South and Happy Valley neighborhoods. So it's located sort of right where those neighborhoods join. The noise variance is requested to allow WashDOT contractors to work nights on the public right-of-way within the jurisdiction of the city of Bellingham between the inclusive dates of April 26th and December 31st of 2022. It's a very long window we're discussing today. The project encompasses two sections within Bellingham, the intersection of Old Fairhaven Parkway and 30th Street, as well as the 2300 block of 33rd Street. The project includes removing existing fish passage barriers on Padden Creek crossing of I-5 and State Route 11, otherwise known as Old Fairhaven Parkway. I believe, Mr. Johnston, do you want to describe this project a little more, especially like the time, how much impact there will be across what amount of time?
Sure, that's a great introduction, Mr. Lillquist, and Chad Schulheis, and I will double up on this a little bit. This is a DOT project, so the Washington State Department of Transportation. It's a continuation of their efforts and our efforts combined to improve fish passage along Padden Creek and other places in the city. This is part of the state's responsibility to remove fish barriers underneath state highways. And Old Fairhaven Parkway is still classified as a state highway, as is I-5. The DOT's project is about a $30 million project, and that will be replacing a couple of culverts and installing, I believe, 2 new bridges over I-5 to improve the fish passage going over up Padden Creek. So the duration is a lengthy one. Given the time involved to construct those large structures underneath I-5. They have started that work. I was noticing this morning that Granite is out there today on some preliminary efforts, but the expectation, and this is really from the DOT, is that most of the impacts to motorists would be fairly minor, but there is a significant amount of night work that would need to be done. And what that's largely intended to do is to minimize the disruption to people using the roadways, both people in cars or on bikes, or particularly on I-5. We want to minimize the amount of negative impact of traffic delays due to the type of construction. So a lot of the work will be done at night, I suspect. But the duration of the project is about 2 years. It's a significant project, large expense associated with that, and they need our authorization for the noise variance in the evening hours. Chad, anything else you'd like to add to that?
The only thing I would add, Eric, and thank you for that introduction. That was very precise. The only thing I would add to that is that it's not a year and a half or 2 years of all work at night. The work on Old Fairhaven Parkway is for 40 non-consecutive nights over that 2 years, and the work out on 33rd is for 125 non-consecutive nights, just so everyone's aware that they would be out doing night work during those periods over the next year and a half. And we've got a couple of representatives of the contractor and WashDOT here if we have any detailed questions that need to be answered.
Perhaps you could also have someone speak to the steps being taken to minimize the noise. I noticed, for example, tailgate banging would be avoided. Other things that would be done so that even though work would go on at night, it maybe wouldn't be as disruptive.
Right, they've got their typical mitigation measures. Tailgate banging will be limited. They'll also be notifying the neighbors within the vicinity at least 10 days ahead of time prior to that night work. And actually, I'm going to hand it over to Nick Lupo, who's here. He's with Granite Construction, who's the design build contractor with WashDOT. And Nick, is there anything you can add to that?
No, can you hear me? Just to verify, can you hear me, Chad?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. The only thing I would add is the significant portion of the work that would have an impact at night would be the work primarily in August of 21 here as we install the new culvert on SR 11. The work on 33rd Street adjacent to I-5 will really primarily just drive our access to and from I-5. But that will be consistent with some in 2021 and some in 2022. So I don't know if there's any questions beyond that.
So Nick, perhaps you could answer this. I believe near Old Fairhaven Parkway, there is a convalescent facility not too far away, and a few condos further away. I guess I don't know whether or not the fact that there's a convalescent facility plays into how this will be handled.
Nick, did you hear that question?
Well, yeah, a little bit. It's breaking up. I have a very poor internet connection. Unfortunately, I can't get it to work here at our office.
So basically, looking at the convalescent center, are there any different mitigation measures that you're doing from a typical noise variance because of the proximity of the convalescent center on SR 11 Old Fairhaven Parkway?
We hadn't anticipated doing anything significantly different than what we normally do, but if that was something that we needed to anticipate before we did that, yeah, we could make adjustments as needed.
So I'm referring to not the facility right there on the parkway, but just behind it. I mean, maybe the thing to do is ask the people who run that medical facility whether or not it's an issue.
And Mr. Lillquist, if I might, oftentimes the contractors will, as Nick pointed out, they'll be in contact with the neighbors before this night work occurs. And we could probably just ask that they reach out specifically to the convalescent center to make sure they're aware of when the work occurs and get some feedback when that process occurs. Not necessarily put stipulations from the city onto that, but ask that they reach out to them and engage with those folks and hopefully resolve it at that level rather than having a stipulation as to what they might do or not do on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag the issue. So joining me on the committee are council members Lisa Anderson and Jean Knutson. I can't see any of you right now. If any of you would like to speak, Albert.
Thank you, Councilmember Lillquist. I do have a couple of questions. One would be just more of a verification of an assumption that most of this work would be happening over the weeknights versus weekends. If you could verify that. And then even though this is a noise pollution or noise permit, I'm kind of wondering about the light pollution. I know when there's large construction projects along the highway, they'll bring in those really huge lights to light up at nighttime. And there are some condos and houses in there. And I'm wondering what steps are being taken to mitigate. I'm assuming that the direction of the lights won't be infiltrating too much at nighttime, some of the residency, but I'd like confirmation on that.
So Ms. Anderson, that's a good question. This is a noise variance, which is required by the Bellingham City Code. We do not currently have a city code that requires mitigation measures for lighting at the evening hours. So that would not be covered by our current code, unfortunately.
Well, that might be something we.
I'll move approval of the variance.
Thank you, Jean. We have a motion before us. Is there any further discussion from either committee members or other council members?
Just one question briefly. Thank you. So when it says non-consecutive nights, I'm assuming that that entire block, right, isn't happening at once, but my presumption is that there still will be consecutive nights of work. Is that correct? Or?
I think that's a fair assumption. We're probably too early in the process right now to know when those dates would occur. So the noise variance is very broad. It just allows for that to occur between now and the end of 2022. Honestly, I would not be surprised if that gets extended a little bit, but we don't know what those consecutive dates are. Contractor will be doing the notifications to those nearby residents, as he indicated previously. But you could probably expect that it might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row where there might be some night work. But the 40 days does allow for that to occur over a period of time, I think.
So, Eric, I guess the question is that Granite will be required to reach out to the affected, potentially affected residents nearby. But other than letting them know about the work and saying it's permitted by the city council under a variance, will they have to take steps to kind of respond to or accommodate concerns, or are we pretty much saying it's a necessary evil and it'll happen?
Well, it's a little bit of both, I think, right? I mean, so the work does need to be done, right? So we do need the project to occur, and the best way for that water project to get completed in some cases is to do that work at night. Probably one of the best ways to get the contractor to work with the neighbors is to make that contact, right? And have the phone calls go directly from the neighbors to the contractor and let them work with that. So if there's a truck driver who's banging his tailgate around, the contractor needs to know that. They can address that with that individual truck driver. If for some reason they're not able to resolve those issues, then they can reach out to the city or to the DOT to help resolve that on a global perspective. But many times we found that the specific noise concerns are one-to-one with the contractor and the adjacent neighbor, and they're best able to resolve that on a one-to-one basis.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lupo, I'm hoping you're able to hear some of this conversation.
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you so much. Is there any further discussion? Holly, go ahead.
One, hopefully. How are the affected residences notified?
That's a good question for Mr. Lupo.
Yeah, we will coordinate with the DOT, and we will do both mailing effort and a virtual outreach effort. We're working right now. We have a public outreach for the job tomorrow for businesses and residents, and we'll work to kind of conglomerate all the contacts we need, and then we'll just continually be in contact as we're as we begin construction and working through that process. That'll be kind of a constant thing we're working on.
Okay, so it sounds like multiple avenues maybe of communication, so that people who get their notifications in different ways might still be covered. So sounds like.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. All committee members who are in favor of a recommendation to approve the noise variance signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I'll bring that forward, the positive recommendation tonight. Thank you very much, everyone. Hold on a second. I will go on to the next item, which is an ordinance updating the Bellingham Municipal Code sections which govern adjustments to utility bills for leaks, for billing errors, and for hard surfaces. Right now, the code lacks explicit direction on leak adjustments and errors for water, sewer, and stormwater billing. This creates an ambiguity when interpreting the code for both customers and staff if something comes up. The intent of this update is to establish clear expectations for customers when they are seeking utility adjustments. According to the documents in front of me, the ordinance makes the following changes to the code. 1, limits leak adjustment look back to 2 billing cycles. 2, limits billing error look back to 1 year for both underbilling and overbilling. 3, allows for 1 leak adjustment every 10 years instead of only 1 during the lifetime of a metered service. 4, shifts determination of hard service adjustments from the Public Works Director to the Finance Director, who's in charge of the billing. And 5, makes other minor changes of the related sections, such as properly renaming a few things. There's a pretty thorough write-up there. Is this going to be handled by Mr. Asbjornson? Andy?
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Lillquist. I'll cover this one. It does touch on legal, public works, and finance. We've been discussing this ordinance for a couple years to just get this cleared up, the expectations within the municipal code, and then kind of streamline the municipal code to address these items. And as noted in the agenda bill, this does create the limit of adjustment look back for a two billing cycle. That has been our standard procedure, but now this puts it in the municipal code. It limits billing error look back from a 1 year for both underbilling and overbilling. Currently, there isn't a cutoff period within the municipal code, and we go to the statute of limitations. And when it's stretched out, that can provide or create a hardship to customers and also potentially an administrative burden on looking back to the statute of limitations. It just creates a cleaner version at a 1 year look back. Allows for one leak adjustment every 10 years instead of the lifetime of the meter. And so this provides for a longtime homeowner who's had a leak adjustment. If after 10 years, you can provide for another one. It also clarifies that a sewer billing adjustment may be provided if you've had an adjustment within the 10 years, but if the water has not gone down the sewer system, then you can still provide for a sewer adjustment on top of outside of the leak adjustment if you've had a leak adjustment in the last 10 years. Also shifts determination of hardship or hard surface adjustments from Public Works Director to the Finance Director. This is really associated with billing errors and correcting just what goes on with the system, so we could just get billing errors and adjustments corrected within the system. It doesn't change the fundamental calculations or the other items that Public Works does. And then the rest of it just kind of streamlines the municipal code to make it clear where the adjustments are located and how they're performed. Happy to address any questions. I know Matt Stamps is here and also Eric Johnson is here.
A quick question, Andrew, about the hard surface area. And this really applies mostly to people with large buildings or parking lots rather than to residential customers. Am I correct about that?
So this just handles if this ordinance is just addressing if there's a billing error. If we accidentally bill at an incorrect rate, then it gives me the authority to help make that adjustment. When you're calculating the impervious surface, that's really within the Public Works Department, within stormwater, that evaluates the square footage in the area that will be actually charged that rate.
So if the square footage is wrong, then Public Works needs to address it. But if the billing was wrong, then the Finance Department would handle it.
Yes, that's pretty much. We would defer to the Public Works to evaluate the square footage to determine if there was any change in that measurement.
Mr. Stamps?
Yeah, that's correct. Really what this is doing is before the code was a little bit unclear where those applications were to go. And this just clarifies that all adjustments will come through the Finance Department. And then the Finance Department, if it's a pure billing issue, would probably just resolve it itself. If it's more of a stormwater type nuts and bolts element with like impervious surface area, then the code then says the Finance Director would consult with the Public Works Department to essentially get their determination and recommendation, and the Finance Department would just communicate that back to the applicant. So it's just a process streamline. Everything comes through the Finance Department, and the Finance Department will consult with the Public Works Department as needed. Oh, Michael, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, Lisa, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And I just wanted to note that I don't have the ability to raise a hand on my version of Zoom. So thanks for noticing the real hand. I did have a question, and it's in regards to the current 2 billing cycle. I know that you stated that's our current practice, but we've been discussing the possibility to going to a monthly versus twice a month billing cycle. So currently for the 2 billing cycle, that theoretically could cover 4 months if someone had a leak. And I'm thinking of people who travel during various seasons, and they might be gone and may not realize right away that they have a leak. And so if we approve this and it remains the 2 billing cycle, and then later down the line, we adjust to where we're billing monthly, in a way we're cutting that in half for the adjustment period. Is that a correct statement as how this would apply?
Eric, did you want to take that one, or?
Well, there's probably 2 parts to that. I think you're correct that when we say 2 cycles, if we go to monthly billing, then the look back would be 2 months versus 2 cycles being 4 months. However, when the reason for the 2 cycles is that we are checking water meters every cycle. So right now, your water meter is read automatically. So nearly by the time we get to monthly billing, every water meter in the city will be connected to the automatic meter system. Right now, that system is pinged, so you check the billing twice every 4 months. We'll now check it twice every 2 months. And so the frequency with which you would detect a leak, which we have protocols in place on the software systems to automatically identify those leaks, would occur more frequently. So in the case of somebody being gone for 4 months, we would find that leak sooner going to monthly billing. So it helps both ways. So going from monthly billing, from 2 months to monthly billing, we would find that leak faster, we would notify the customer faster, and we would shut the water off faster if they were in a situation of that nature. So I think it's probably, generally speaking, is benefit to the customer by going to the monthly billing, and also benefit to the customer by going with the 2 month look. The 2 cycle look back would be better overall as well.
Thank you. I remember the component that we'd be hopefully able to catch a leak sooner. I was just more concerned about the notification aspect if somebody was out of town and they did automatic bill pay. They may not necessarily, depending on how we notify them that they potentially have a leak, but that's something we could look at when, if we move it to monthly billing.
Any further discussion? Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't serve on this committee, but I appreciate the time. It's also about notice. I just had a point of clarification where it's saying that it's the section F on 49 about when it's limited, it was reduced from 30 days to 10 days, their response time. So it says determination shall be final unless the applicant appeals that decision. And so it's saying within 10 business days. And I was just wondering how that noted that written decision is issued with mail lately, and 10 days and weekends, and when a decision's issued and dated versus when it's actually mailed and then received. 10 days just seemed like a short turnaround time, but I was curious the motivation for that reduction from 30 to 10.
Ms. Stone, what section were you looking at? I'm sorry.
So on page 49 of our packet in F, it's talking about your appeal needs to be within 10 days. Well, I guess it's 10 business days. So that would be 2 weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time finding that. I don't have the same packet page number as you do.
Oh, okay. It's subsection F under the.
It's a couple of paragraphs right above the signature lines at the end of the ordinance.
It's in section.
Okay, I'm sorry. I found it.
And that addresses after the decision's been made and we've communicated out to the applicant. And so generally we're in communication with the applicant. And so they're aware of the decision. And so I think it just shortens the window to be able to move on. But we do generally have an email address or ensure that we have communicated with them and they're aware of the decision. We're not trying to make it more restrictive. I think it was just trying to make it a little clearer to be able to move forward with the decisions that have been made.
Okay, but the decision is issued in, I was just curious how they're receiving that, if it's mailed, but it sounds like maybe it's email communication.
We generally have multiple forms of communication, either email and mail, so we can be in communication with them.
Let me ask it this way. Are there any other similar notifications, and what is the time for them to appeal other similar notifications from the finance director?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, so this is a time period after notification of a final decision by the finance director. Are there other kinds of final determinations by finance directors which also have a response date? And is it also 10 business days or?
What this, Matt Stamps legal again. So sorry, it took me a minute to kind of get my bearings there, but yes, it's 10 days also. So if you look at the two different provisions, this was just syncing them up. So the section that Ms. Stone was looking at was under the stormwater section of the code, chapter 1516. And so that's going to be an appeal of a decision to change like impervious surface area or to apply for a credit based on, you know, being a low income housing project or something like that, not utility billing errors. And so, and what we were doing there is you get a written decision from the director on that. And then this provides, the section we were just looking at, will provide 10 days to appeal that decision. And that syncs it up with the section earlier in the code under utility billing errors, that's the 1504095. And that too has the 10-day appeal period. So we wanted to keep those consistent.
There's also a comparison to the hearing examiner, which requires appeal within 10 days of the decision of the hearing examiner. So there's some consistency, not just within the utility billing, but other processes of the city.
That's true.
Ms. Stone, anything further?
No, I just wanted, since in the red line going from 30 to 10, I just wanted to follow through on the basis for that, but that makes sense. Thank you.
I have one final question, and then I think we're going to move ahead with this, which is how many leak adjustments do we typically get in a year? Is it 5 or 500 or something between?
It varies. We were getting more when we were implementing the meter switch out. And so there was some identification of some meters linked to the wrong accounts. But as that project has ended, we've now been able to, those have been significantly reduced. But if there's a very cold winter, we might get some more leak adjustments with broken pipes. It's kind of weather dependent. So I would say we've had less than 20 on the year, probably even less than 10, 15 this year.
Okay, thank you. Have we had a motion yet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of recommending approval of this ordinance for utility billing adjustments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll bring it forward as a mixed recommendation tonight. And I believe that was the last item for the Public Works Committee. Is there any further business before Public Works?
Where's the mixed recommendation at, Michael?
I thought, Lisa, I thought you.
No, I said aye.
Okay, I heard it later when I called for the no votes.
Oh.
Okay, so it's a positive recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, I will bring it forward with a unanimous recommendation tonight. Thanks for the correction. Any further business before Public Works?
We have one bid award, Mr. Lillquist.
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
You haven't missed it yet. You're good.
This is the Park Place Water Quality Facility reconstruction?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. So this is a bid award for the Park Place Water Quality Facility reconstruction. The Park Place Stormwater Facility rebuild project replaces an existing facility with a phosphorus optimized stormwater treatment or POST system, which was developed by the City of Bellingham and its partners. The POST system was approved by the Washington State Department of Ecology for pilot project use of phosphorus removal statewide in 2018, and will be the first large-scale installation within the city and Lake Whatcom watershed. The point behind this treatment is, of course, to help restore and improve the quality of the water in Lake Whatcom, which is suffering from an excess of phosphorus. The project will improve the removal of phosphorus and help meet the city's obligation under the Lake Whatcom Management Plan and the required total maximum daily load requirements. The city received 10 bids, which were publicly opened on March 24th. Boss Construction was the responsible bidder who submitted the lowest bid of $1,674,175.03, including sales tax, which was a nice bit below the engineer's estimate. State grants are actually going to be paid for $1.2 million of this project, leaving the rest, I assume, to be taken up by the stormwater fund, actually, the stormwater fund. Mr. Johnson, is there any further discussion or information on this?
I'll turn that straight over to Chad Schulhauser.
No, I think you covered it very well, Mr. Lillquist. We did have 10 bidders. We're still getting good numbers in this bid atmosphere, and we're excited to award this project. This is an existing facility that we are retrofitting, and yeah, happy to answer any detailed questions you may have.
Just a quick one, Chad. I always ask this every time I see a name I don't recognize. Boss do work with us before, I'm sure.
They have not done work recently, but they have done work in the past, and they do a lot of municipal work. In fact, they were the contractor on the roundabouts out on Smith Road for WashDOT, and they've done other municipal work.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion or questions?
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Gene. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of recommending awarding of the bid to Boss Construction for the rehabilitation using the post system, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, I believe that too was unanimous. Did I get that right? Okay. Is there any further business before the Public Works Committee at this point? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the Public Works Committee and return it back to you, Ms. Stone.
Thank you, Councilmember Lillquist. So that ends our morning committee meetings, but we will reconvene this afternoon at 1 o'clock, starting with Parks and Recreation. So for now, we are adjourned. Thank you.